It is 10:35, and we're in City Hall, room 1010. Everybody welcome. And we have a quorum. We are joined by Councilmember Mitch Englander and Councilmember Joe Buscaino. I'd like to call this meeting in order. I'd like to remind any one of those folks outside, if you want to speak on any of the agenda items, please fill out an agenda card, public comment card, and bring it to the front of the room. And I'd like to open up for public. Was there a comment card? Yeah, bring it on up to the clerk. Can you check if they're public comment or for item number 2? So, seeing there's no public comment, we'll close at this time. Item number 1, Mr. CLA, can you read in item number 1, please?
Item number 1 is Los Angeles Department of Aging report relative to a request for approval to accept an additional $25,270 in health insurance counseling and advocacy program funds for fiscal year 2016-17 under the California Department of Aging Standard Agreement.
This is a standard Department of Aging HICAPA grant acceptance item, and there is no public comment card. And unless members have any questions, I'd like to move this item. Thank you.
Did it come
there
in
is one comment card?
after we started?
No, for item number 1?
Yes.
Okay.
Came in after we started. Somebody's disrupting the meeting.
Okay, so this came in time. So we have one comment card. If we could have Mr. Spindler come on up, 1 minute.
Good morning, Defendant Englander. Anyway, so the health insurance counseling programs, aging standard agreement. Anybody know what this is? No. Englander doesn't know. Oh, Joe knows what it is. So I will trust the chair's opinion. Do we really need this $25,000 in health insurance counseling and advocacy? Or should we forget about it and let Donald Trump deal with the Affordable Care Act and see if we need it? Oh, okay. Yes, I'll take that. Code 3, thank you. Code 4. Okay, so now, you know what that is, Code 4. So anyway, I will defer to the chair about this, but I think we could put this off until we see the effects of Mr. Trump's executive orders.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment card, we're going to move this unanimously. Thank you. Item number 2, Mr. CLA.
Item number 2 is a Chief Legislative Analyst report and City Attorney to report relative to the activities of other jurisdictions to limit the deceptive practices of crisis pregnancy centers, including recommendations on how deceptive advertising can be limited within the City of Los Angeles.
Thank you, Mr. CLA. And this has been brought forth by our colleague, Councilmember Martinez, and we really thank her for bringing these important issues, especially during these trying times, to the attention of our committee. And we also like to thank the CLA and the City Attorney for working on this report. I would like to start by asking Amy Everett of Naral to come to the table to give us 5 minutes of testimony on the issues their organization has seen regarding the false advertising in the Crisis Pregnant Center. And I'm sorry your PowerPoint is unavailable, but
it will make it interesting when I show you the examples.
Great.
Well, thank you very much. I'm Amy Everett, the State Director of NARAD Pro-Choice California, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to address this committee, and thank you for bringing this issue up. I also want to especially acknowledge and thank City Attorney Mike Fuhr and his staff for their leadership, their national leadership, in promoting and enforcing the Reproductive Fact Act, which has brought all Cpcs in LA into compliance with that act. While this is an excellent first step, we believe that there are more things that need to happen to mitigate the harmful impacts of crisis pregnancy centers. Crisis pregnancy centers are fake clinics that are dressed up to look like legitimate healthcare centers. They, however, what they are organizations that are run by anti-choice groups with one agenda and one agenda only, and that is to stop any and all women from accessing abortion care. They have an interesting business model. They have sort of a low-tech way of attracting victims. One is, you may have seen billboards or signs at bus stops that say, "Pregnant, scared, need help, call us." And then they have a much more sophisticated angle, which is their online search engine advertising buying. They will buy terms like abortion Los Angeles or abortion care with the sole purpose of attracting what they refer to as abortion-minded women. If you are pregnant and planning to continue your pregnancy, they do not want you through their doors, only if they can try to talk you out of accessing abortion care. What is interesting is that in a few years ago, a journalist for Cosmopolitan magazine went to one of the national Cptc conferences. At this conference, she attended the advertising section where people were instructed to have two websites. The first website was for their donors and supporters, where their anti-choice agenda to eliminate abortion access in America was clearly stated and their mission. But to have a second website that was targeted to their potential clients, which made no mention of what their agenda was and specifically instructed people on the phone never to talk about the fact that they did not refer to or provide abortion care. Their search engines are so sneaky that even though Google has acknowledged that crisis pregnancy centers regularly violate their truth in advertising policies, they still manage to get through. So at this point, I would show you some advertising examples, but I will just describe them for you unless we end up having our technology work. We did an undercover investigation here in Los Angeles of very specific Cptcs. When we searched for the term abortion LA, there were 4 that came to the top. And they all looked very similar. One was for Planned Parenthood LA, and there were 3 others. 2 of them were actually for crisis pregnancy centers, but you really wouldn't know that unless you knew what a crisis pregnancy center was. We followed up that online search with phone calls to the centers. We called abortionhollywood.com. And while our researcher presented herself on the phone as somebody who had taken a pregnancy test at home, knew she was pregnant, and knew that she had decided not to continue the pregnancy, on the phone call, never once was she told that they did not provide or refer for abortion, but was encouraged over and over to come in to access an ultrasound to see if her baby was healthy and if she had a healthy pregnancy. One of the tactics that we have found in our undercover statewide investigation is oftentimes CPCs will say, do an ultrasound and we can determine if you are at risk of a miscarriage. And if you are, then you don't actually need to access abortion care. That is obviously practically medical malfeasance. In another...
The agency was called Abortion Hollywood?
Yes.
.com? Wow.
Abortionhollywood.com. There is another one that is run by Heartbeat International called Options Line. Heartbeat International is the host of the conference I mentioned earlier, where they say on their Options Line under their frequently asked questions about the morning after pill, where they said it is irresponsible advertising in that they say that the morning after pill will harm your pregnancy if you take it. This is not medically accurate at all. You are actually supposed to take the morning after pill within 72 hours after you think you might have become pregnant. In slides 4 and 5, another group, CareNet, would put up ads, and they have also information about it. And in this one, they're very clear over and over in their statements, and we'll submit these afterwards so you have them, that abortion is 4 times more dangerous than abortion is 4 times more pregnant than childbirth. This is grossly inaccurate. Every single medically acclaimed and reviewed study has said that abortion care is actually the safest medical procedure in America. 1 in 3 women access it before they are 45 in America. So the upshot of what this advertising has, the impact of it, is that no one should lie in their advertising, but especially when the costs are so great. For a woman, there are opportunity costs, economic costs, and emotional costs. For arranging to take time off of work, for arranging for travel, for possibly arranging for childcare, to only go to a center where you thought you were going there and accessing medically accurate information about all of your options, including abortion care, only to spend hours being shamed and humiliated for trying to access that care, and also not achieving that goal. And in addition, it is dangerous for women's health. The faster you are, when you are pregnant, the faster you can access legitimate medical care, the better it is for you. Whether you decide to terminate the pregnancy or continue the pregnancy, prenatal care is also critical, real prenatal care. And so they have these centers, crisis pregnancy centers, have been advertising across this country for years with impunity. And it is now time that they be held accountable for the lies that they are spewing. And I would encourage Los Angeles, you have the opportunity to continue your amazing leadership in protecting the reproductive freedom and rights of women. And I would encourage you to continue to make this a priority and use the laws that are currently available to encourage the city attorney to investigate and bring charges on false advertising. On behalf of the 1,600 NARAL members who have signed a petition encouraging this, I will submit these to you. I thank you for your time.
Thank you so very much. And, you know, and if we happen to get it up, I'd love to call you back just so you could show us the actual examples. Colleagues, do you have any questions?
Well, Amy, could you just, AB 775,
Yeah.
how effective has that been, state law?
It has just come into effect on January 1.
Okay, so this is a, okay,
It's a relatively new law.
so we haven't, give it some time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we'll have the city attorney come up and talk about that as well. Okay. Mitch? Thank you so much.
Okay.
But if you could hang around.
I will absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to, I'd like to do public comment at this point. Could I get Mr. Spindler to come up 1 minute?
Good motion. So this is good stuff. As I've been trying to tell them, plug the laptop into the television set and all her stuff will come up, and you can see the advertising example she's giving, because part of what they're doing is they're trying to tell these women have the abortion, or sometimes they're masquerading and they're trying to stop abortions by claiming they're clinics. But the point is, in New York City, half of African American women's pregnancies end in abortion. That's insane. That we can't have that. And in minority communities is a very, very high. And I think that what we still need to do is healthy babies be born and given to loving families. There are so many of these people that want a child. And that's really what I support. But on the other hand, a woman's right to her body is paramount. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd like to call up Commissioner Geraldine Stapleton, who is also the president of California Now. And as a commissioner, I'd like to afford to give you 3 minutes. Okay. As my commissioner, too.
Good morning. Oops. Yeah, I know. I always have to adjust it. When you're my size, anyway, California Now does represent, I think, the largest women's organization in the state of California. We are here to support this measure wholeheartedly. We are very, very concerned about false information that's getting to our low-income women of color, and especially women that do not speak English as their first language. This is a huge, huge problem. And for them not to receive proper medical care in terms of the information to be given, or falsely misled in terms of cases that I have heard of where they on purpose were not given the results of their pregnancy test until it was too late for them to have a legal abortion. However, they should be free to have this information correctly and to be able to make choices based upon that and not be falsely led into these places that, quote, say that they are an abortion center when really they're not at all. Their sole purpose is to dissuade them and to provide them with false information. Our women need and deserve to have the correct medical information, whichever it is, to make their proper choices. So I would encourage you to support the measures and support everything that was said by Amy, and to take a look at AB 775 and see if we can't incorporate that into implementing that into the city of Los Angeles and really get a handle on this, because, like I say, lives are at stake here when it comes to this problem. It's not a joke. Pregnancy has a very tight timeline, and people need to know what's going on with their own bodies to make their own choices. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Next, we have Dr. Shirley Lee, Nancy Wayne, and Rabbi Joel Simmons? Simon? Okay. The three of you guys could come on up. It's a minute each. If you could state your name.
Hi, I am Shirley Wang. I am a doctor in general practice. I work at All Family Health Clinic in Boyle Heights. Our patient population is mostly low-income minority patients who speak Spanish. This is a really vulnerable population, and we treat at least 100 patients per week, 10 new patients every week regarding family planning, birth control, prenatal care. It's really important that these patients get accurate, timely information about the risks and benefits and the procedures that are available to them. And it really concerns me that they may go to that they may go online and get false, misleading information, or go to a clinic that is not actually medically directed, where they're not seeing a medical professional who is giving them non-judgmental, guilt-free medical information. So I'd really appreciate it if you would look into that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wang.
I'm Dr. Nancy Wayne, professor of physiology at the UCLA School of Medicine. I do research in reproductive physiology, and I teach reproduction, pregnancy, and birth control, including abortion. And I just want to lend my voice to the supporters of the Reproductive Fact Act. Misinformation is extremely dangerous. And I just want to remind everybody that year after year after year, the United States has one of the poorest maternal death rates out of any of the developed countries and many underdeveloped countries. There's a reason for that. And these dangerous practices, prevent women from getting timely care and contribute to this terrible death rate. That is an embarrassment, quite frankly. We shouldn't be doing this. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Wayne.
I'm Rabbi Joel Simons with the Religious Action Center of Reformed Judaism, their West Coast director. I represent all of the Reformed Jewish congregations here in the city of Los Angeles. We stand with NARAL. We stand with reproductive choice. We can debate in Scripture on this issue, but one thing we cannot debate in Scripture is the idea of providing information, not telling lies, and giving proper information to those who deserve it. Reformed Judaism was founded on the idea of choice through knowledge. Clearly, we are not giving these women a choice when they are not receiving the proper information and the proper knowledge. We stand with NARAL, all of the Reformed Jewish movement. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Next, could we have Rabbi Julie Bressler, Karen Gilman, and Dr. Chen.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Chen. I'm an OBGYN physician, and I see the direct consequences of women who've had delayed care after visiting a crisis pregnancy center. Women state they were not referred to a higher level of care or experienced significant delays. And these are the women who need to see a doctor the most. They are very vulnerable because of their medical conditions, and yet they were not referred. So these CPCs victimize women who are most vulnerable and need to see a doctor the most. These women had ultrasounds at these facilities, but the women are unable to access the record, just like you and I could access our own medical records. These women are not given an accurate date for their due dates for their pregnancy. These women can't tell if they were seen by a licensed medical provider at these facilities. Women who come to medical care after visiting one of these centers feel shame and self-loathing. They feel tricked. These centers don't promote women's health. They make it worse. Women cannot tell if the CPC is legitimately going to take care of their medical needs. Los Angeles should join the many cities that are already limiting these deceptive practices. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chen.
Good morning. I'm Rabbi Julie Bressler, and I'm here representing the Organized Reformed Jewish Community of California. And I believe that in my faith tradition, we are taught that honesty and truth and fair access to information is central to what we deserve as humans. Women should be the moral decision makers for their own bodies. They should be treated with respect and dignity. And these centers deprive them of this fundamental human right. And I urge you to investigate these centers and ensure that they are not continuing these dangerous practices against women in this state.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Good morning, Chairperson Rue and Council members Buscaino and Englander. I'm Karen Gilman, a proud constituent of CD4, and I'm representing the California it's RCRC, the California Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice, of which Women of Reform Judaism is a proud collaborating member, and I'm a member of Temple Israel of Hollywood. I'm here to to echo what people have said, to remind all of us that only 2 cities in the country have passed laws creating specific penalties for this kind of false advertising by CPCs, San Francisco and Oakland. LA has been a leader in enforcing statewide law requiring CPCs to share reproductive health information. The city needs to take the next steps by investigating these false advertising practices and holding CPCs accountable for lying to women. That'd be a groundbreaking effort to put CPCs on the defense and protect consumers from their devious approach. I'm proud to live in LA where the City Council takes measures to uphold the standards. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gilman. Next, we have Megan Kostin and Andrea Vancura.
Hi, I'm Megan Keister. As a journalist, I went undercover at a local CPC on Vermont Boulevard. The URL of the clinic I patronized had the word abortion in it, stood on the same block as a Planned Parenthood. A certificate of congratulations from the LA County Board of Supervisors hung behind its front desk. After taking a pregnancy test, I was given a pamphlet that read abortion injuries could be fatal and made to watch videos graphically describing the fictitious risks of abortion up to and including the widely discredited myth it could increase my propensity for breast cancer. These facts were presented as scientific with legitimate-looking references to medical studies attached. Had I not known otherwise, I could have easily believed them. Every time I reiterated my desire for an abortion, my request was ignored. When the ultrasound I was given revealed no fetus, indicating a possibly entropic and therefore possibly fatal pregnancy, I was referred to an off-site doctor a Google search quickly revealed was a pro-life OBGYN. I chose not to take the referral. Many scared and confused women, however, have, and they deserve more than deception. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Andrea?
Thank you, council members. Pregnancy resource centers exist to promote community health and empower us women by offering an array of free and/or ultra-low-cost pregnancy and sexual health services to underserved populations in LA, as well as complete information about all options in the interest of promoting fully informed consent. I agree deceptive advertising is not good. However, no pregnancy resource center advertises that they provide abortion. That would be false and deceptive advertising. However, they simply advertise that they provide free services that abortion providers charge for: pregnancy tests, ultrasound, STD testing, and so on and so forth. Individuals are free to make their own choices, but freedom of speech provides that the government cannot force an organization to make referrals they have reason to believe would be harmful. We don't force alcoholism recovery groups to provide information on where people can get alcohol, etc. By making this policy, LA is showing that it does not support grassroots, community-based, free and low-cost healthcare and social assistance services, but would rather push us to businesses whose financial bottom line is based on profiting off of our lives and our bodies. Thank you.
Thank you. And can you state your name for the record?
Andrea Vancura.
Thank you. If my colleagues don't mind, we have the PowerPoint up and ready. Do you mind if we call Amy back up to show us some of the examples? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so this is the first one that I talked about where the search terms were for free abortion in Los Angeles. And you can see that the top 4 all look very similar, but 2 of them are actually crisis pregnancy centers. This is the one that we ended up, no. This is the one for Options Line that is run by Heartbeat International. On their website, this is what they say about the morning after pill. If you're already pregnant, taking the morning after pill will not help and may harm you. To find out if you're pregnant, contact us and we'll connect you with the caring qualified pregnancy center near you. This is misleading because the morning after pill is you don't take it if you are pregnant. You actually see a doctor and they make a prescription for you to access that care. How much abortion costs? My abortion questions on this site is where they talk about the dangers of abortion care. Isn't abortion safer for me than giving birth since I'm a teen? The information on this website is all erroneous. It's the last one. As I said during my testimony, abortion care is actually the safest medical care in the country. It is the largest outpatient service provided, and it has an incredibly low incidence rate of complication.
Thank you, Amy. Very much appreciate that. And thank you to one of the investigative reporters for sharing your actual investigation. Now I'd like to call up our CLA and city attorney to come to the table to report on the motion and what actions has been taken to date and what they recommend as appropriate actions moving forward.
Good morning. Brian Randall, Office of the CLA. On April 20th, 2016, the City Council approved a motion by Council members Martinez and Bonin, which instructed our office and the City Attorney to report on the activities of other jurisdictions to limit the deceptive practices of crisis pregnancy centers, including recommendations on how deceptive advertisement can be limited within the city. As instructed, our office and the City Attorney analyzed CPC-related regulations in other jurisdictions. We found that several jurisdictions have adopted laws that require these facilities to inform their clients of all possible family planning services or prohibit these facilities from engaging in false and misleading advertising. The jurisdictions include the state of California, the cities of Oakland, San Francisco, New York, Baltimore, Maryland, Austin, Texas, and also Montgomery County, Maryland. As also described by previous speakers, our previous investigations by Congress and other entities have determined that some advertisements from these facilities on billboards, web searches, and other locations have deceived clients into believing that these facilities are comprehensive health facilities that provide all types of family planning services, including abortion, despite the fact that these services are not actually offered. These facilities have also incorrectly advised clients that there is an increased risk of long-term emotional harm, infertility, and breast cancer resulting from a terminated pregnancy. The City of Los Angeles currently performs enforcement efforts under the provisions of state law. As also described by previous speakers, AB 775 is also known as the Reproductive Fact Act and requires these facilities in California to provide specified notices to clients about where to access affordable family planning services. The City Attorney has also advised that the City currently has sufficient authority under the State Business and Professions Code to bring an action against one of these facilities for false and misleading advertising. The City Attorney is currently enforcing these laws in coordination with the Los Angeles County Department of Consumer and Business Affairs. We recommend that the Council request the City Attorney to provide a status report within 90 days on these investigations and resulting enforcement efforts. And that concludes our report, and I can turn it over to the City Attorney's Office to provide an update on current enforcement efforts against these facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Randall. Yes, please.
Sure. Good morning. My name is Travis Austin, and I supervise the City Attorney's Office Consumer and Workplace Protection Unit. I appreciate the opportunity to report back to the Council on the enforcement actions our office has taken against crisis pregnancy centers, or CPCs. To date, those efforts have focused on enforcing the applicable laws that are geared to increase transparency to CPC clients, in addition to eliminating deceptive business practices. Before I talk about our enforcement efforts that we've made to date, I want to explain the tools that our section has available to us currently to address deceptive practices that are being engaged in by CPCs really throughout the country. Those tools involve both criminal prosecution potentially and civil law enforcement actions. With respect to criminal prosecution, we have the false advertising law, which is Business and Professions Code 17500. We're able to, that particular law prohibits any untrue or misleading advertising. It's the broad false advertising law that applies to all businesses, and a violation of that particular BMP code section is punishable as a misdemeanor and carries a sentence of up to 6 months in the county jail or $2,500 fine. The allegations that have been lodged against CPCs also, there are other applicable criminal statutes that may apply. That involves the unlicensed practice of medicine when you are dealing with an unlicensed CPC. That particular code section could be filed as a felony or a misdemeanor. If it is filed as a misdemeanor, it is punishable by a $10,000 fine and up to 1 year in the county jail. The third potential criminal statute that would apply to CPCs is theft by false pretenses. And this would occur if there was some consideration or money given to the CPC and the client relied upon any false or misleading pretense prior to giving that money. And that is also, depending on the amount of the loss, could be filed as a felony or a misdemeanor. And as a misdemeanor, carries a punishment of up to 1 year in the county jail or a $5,000 fine. In addition to the criminal actions that our office can pursue, our office can also pursue civil law enforcement actions in the name of the people. And we do that under the unfair competition law, which is Business and Professions Code 17200. And that particular section prohibits any unlawful, unfair, or fraudulent business practice. That includes, under the unlawful prong, that would include violations of the false advertising law, the Reproductive Fact Act, or any other violation of law that may be occurring. In addition, it includes any fraudulent business act or practice or any unfair, deceptive, untrue, or misleading advertising. The remedies that accompany the unfair competition law involve a potential civil penalty of up to $2,500 per violation, in addition to injunctive relief. The false advertising law, in addition to it being potentially a misdemeanor violation, can also be a civil cause of action, which carries a remedy of $2,500 per violation. And then the last potential civil cause of action includes the Reproductive Fact Act, which was newly elected, became effective January 1st, 2016. That the Reproductive Fact Act, if the difference between the Reproductive Fact Act and the false advertising law and the unfair competition law is the Reproductive Fact Act requires a written notice of violation, provides for a cure period of 30 days for the offending CPC, and the remedy would be a $500 for the first violation and for any subsequent violation up to $1,000 for the second offense. There is no injunctive remedy as it stands right now for the Reproductive Fact Act. Those are the most applicable tools we have to enforce violations for CPCs that are engaged in deceptive advertising. And now I'd just like to address our current enforcement efforts to this point with respect to CPCs. On April 28th, 2016, approximately 5 months after the Reproductive Fact Act came into existence, our office was notified that there were 6 CPCs in the city of LA who may be operating in violation of the Reproductive Fact Act and engaging in deceptive business practices. On May 16th, our office sent letters to those 6 CPCs that were identified as operating within the city of Los Angeles and informed those businesses of their legal obligations that they had under the Reproductive Fact Act. A week later, our office coordinated with the LA County Department of Consumer and Business Affairs and came up with a proactive game plan on how to investigate these 6 CPCs. The scope of the investigation was broader than just compliance with the Fact Act. The scope of the investigation include any CPC that was engaged in unlawful, unfair, or fraudulent business practices. The investigation took approximately 1 month to complete, It involved undercover operations, a review of the advertising and marketing materials, the recovery of the informational brochures and pamphlets that were being distributed at the CPCs, and interviewing several employees that worked at the CPCs. The investigative findings revealed that 4 out of the 6 CPCs were out of compliance with the Reproductive Fact Act. They did not have the required posting that was mandated by law. So in July and August of 2016, our office sent 4 notices of violation and to the offending CPCs and allowed those CPCs 30 days to cure those violations, meaning they had to post the required notices. We informed those CPCs that if on day 31 those violations existed, our office was prepared to go into court and seek a temporary restraining order and file a civil law enforcement action under the unfair competition law. In September of 2016, a follow-up investigation by our office revealed that the last offending CPC was brought into compliance and that they had the legally mandated notices and disclosures that were required under the FACT Act. As far as I know, our office has been the first and to date the only office that has successfully enforced the Reproductive Fact Act. Last week, I spoke with our colleagues over at Department of Consumer and Business Affairs, and they informed me that LA County currently does not have any open complaints or active investigations against CPCs. And as our office has said previously, if there is anyone who has any current complaints against CPCs for deceptive practices or false and misleading advertising, they are encouraged to contact me directly, and they could do that at area code 213-473-6908, or contact the investigators at the LA County Department of Consumer and Business Affairs at area code 1-800-593-8222. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, and thank you very much for that very comprehensive report. And I think this is such an opportune right time. Yesterday being I believe the 43rd anniversary of Roe versus Wade, and there was an amazing women's march. Actually, I can't call it a march because we were supposed to march from Pershing Square to City Hall, but the crowd extended from Pershing Square to City Hall. And I think it was, we still don't have the final count, but 500,000 people out there. I mean, it was, I think, 6-block perimeter. Yeah, from like Flower to Los Angeles. I mean, it was just an amazing sight. So, I mean, this is so important today. And thank you to the city attorney for your leadership in this effort. I mean, Mike Fuhrer, and I know he is, I believe he was there yesterday as well, and he's very proactive on this. And so thank you for that. So let me ask, so if those the 6 that you notified and those who cured their remedy in 30 days, if they violate again, do you have to give them another 30-day notice to remedy the violation, or can you go to straight prosecution?
That's a good question, and it would be our position that we do not have to give them another 30 days.
Right.
And just to clarify, the 30 days is only required under the Reproductive Fact Act. Mm-hmm. It is not required if we chose to pursue violations under the false advertising law or the unfair competition law.
Great. And I'm sure all the various groups will be in conjunction, and thank you for sharing your phone numbers with us, for everyone here. So is there anything else we could do to be more proactive? I mean, any type of more authority as a city that we could give to the city attorney's office, or anything more to help in your efforts?
I would just encourage, we run into the same problem with a lot of our crimes, where victims are reluctant to come forward, mm-hmm. or especially as it relates to CPCs, by the time clients discover that they've been deceived, a lot of times it's too late and they throw up their hands. Mm-hmm. only thing I would encourage is for all the groups that preceded my testimony today, if I would encourage all of them to report violations to either myself or the Department of Consumer Affairs so we could conduct an independent investigation. And the sooner that is done, obviously, the better it is.
Great. Colleagues, any questions?
So, thank you for the report, and thanks to those who came before us to testify. Really, we all appreciate your presence. Out of the 6, how many Cptcs do we have in the city of Los Angeles? Total number? I know 6 were identified here in the report. Do we know?
My understanding, as of about April 2016, that there were 6 CPCs in the city of Los Angeles that have been identified to us.
To us. And then do we know any others? We don't.
I do not know of any others.
Okay. And is there a correlation or collaboration between, say, the finance office and our nonprofits and service providers to identify? I'm sure there are more here in the city of LA, which maybe that can be part of the report back.
Yeah, I'm not aware of, as far as the business office is concerned, but I'd be happy to provide that information in a report back to either to your staff.
Great.
And then going back to AB 775, that was signed into law. It was in 2015. I'm just confused of how that came to fruition. 775.
It was signed into law 2015, and it became effective January 1st, 2016. So it's been in existence for about a year.
Okay. Just help me understand the delay there. Why was it? Were there some challenges to? So it was approved in 2015. Oh, it was signed into law 16.
Correct.
Okay, and then how effective has that been since it's been into law here? So it's been a full year, right?
Correct, and upon us discovering that there were potential violations in April of 2016, the investigations, like I testified before, were more comprehensive than just going in and seeing if they were in compliance with the Reproductive Fact Act. They included undercover operations to see if they were also engaged in deceptive business practices. Understood. Those investigations took a little more than a month to complete. We also, because the only violations that we discovered were violations of the Reproductive Fact Act, we decided to provide a notice of violation and provide everyone 30 days because the law did just come into existence with an opportunity to cure those violations. And by September, every CPC was brought into compliance with the Reproductive Fact Act.
Thank you for clarifying. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much. And again, I just want to really thank the leadership of Councilmember Martinez and Bonin for really being on the forefront of this issue, of all women's issues. And I really want to thank the City Attorney's Office and Mike Fuhrer for your proactive enforcement. And like you said, I think we're the only ones in Southern California who actually have active open cases, or actually closed cases now. But we'll keep on monitoring. And so, colleagues, I'd like to move forward and approve the CLA's recommendations in their report, but I'd like to also keep this in committee, especially in light of these times. We want to monitor what's going on, and I'd like to request the city attorney to report back in 90 days, and not just the city attorney, if the CLA could help monitor, especially what's going on with the feds, if it's necessary, as well as Councilmember Buscaino stated, Office of Finance, to see how they could help in any of the enforcement measures. And I think that's where the councilman was trying to move towards. If there are violations, then we could go after them with the business tax or business license or anything else. So report back on any new progress on preventing false advertising, as well as monitoring the situation.
Very well, thank you.
We'll be happy to look into that.
Thank you. Seeing no objections, we'll move unanimously. And seeing there's no other business before us, this meeting is adjourned, and thank you to everybody who attended today. Thank you.